Hello, creative friends. This episode is going to be about my current project, which is creating something for the Rose Art Challenge. To include a dog for the challenge, I used this picture of my own Springer Spaniel Wren with the idea to make it look like she was holding a basket of roses. I found a basket image that would work for a reference and got a couple books about roses from the library. I sketched different roses from the books so there'd be a little variety of their shapes in the basket, and also I was looking at the variety of colors. I decided to put these references together in a design that I could carve in Linocut and then print on cards and hand color. The cards and the linoleum block are 5 inches by 7 inches, so that was the size that I drew the design so that it will fit just right onto the linoleum. I included a border around the design so it gave a little bit of a margin between the very edges of the card and where the block would print. It just kind of gave a little bit of margin for error when it comes time to print and try and line up the linoleum with the card. I drew the design with a very soft pencil, a 7B to be exact, and that way when it is flipped over, so pencil side towards the lino, it will transfer easily. And there isn't any writing on this image, but I did flip it anyway, just so that it ends up looking like the original photograph. Whenever there's writing for relief printing, it definitely is important to flip the image to put it on the linoleum, since if you carve it so that the block is legible as far as any letters or numbers, well, those will be backwards when they're printed. So anyway, here I am going over the design. So on the back of the piece of tracing paper, again, the pencil side is towards the linoleum, and I'm going over the lines again. I like to use a blue ballpoint pen, and that way I can definitely see where I have redrawn the lines and where I still have to do. So for this design, I was trying to keep in mind the level of difficulty that I had in my previous episode about those other Linocut attempts. I mentioned that I'm pretty much a newbie at this process, and so I wanted this to have some detail, but not too much, since I am still pretty new at it. So anyway, the pencil transferred just fine, and so here I am going over the lines again with a Sharpie, because the pencil will do some smudging. It might lift if it's rubbed, etc. But the Sharpie is going to be permanent, which will help with carving. So, speaking of carving, here is my little tool set that I got. There is a small V-shaped gouge, that's for thin lines, a medium V-shaped gouge for a little bit thicker lines, and then kind of a medium U-shaped gouge and a wide U-shaped gouge. And those are for clearing out areas of linoleum that are not going to print. So in this case, the edges of the linoleum that are outside of the border that I drew. So for that, I'm starting with the medium U-shaped gouge. I continued with that around the outside of the border and was extra careful here where a leaf and some petals and then the bottom of the basket cross slightly over the border. But it helped to work on this simplest part first, the outside of the border, to kind of build up my confidence and get a feel for things before I get into more detailed parts of the design. I started on the details with kind of the next easiest phase, which was outlining the dog and the roses. And so I've learned one thing from watching Linocut artists' tutorials, and that's where any lines meet, to start at the narrower part and carve outward. So here between the leaf and the petal, I'm starting to carve where it's narrow and working outwards. And so I just continued that around the flowers and the dog. And again, starting in a narrower part and working outwards. Because working in the other direction towards a narrower area, any slip and it's going to remove linoleum where it should be to print and have lines, and there's no putting it back once it's cut. Again, carving from the inside of this corner in an outward direction. And forgot to mention that for details, I used the small V gouge. So after I had carved a thin outline around the outside of the dog and the inside of the border line, I switched to a wider gouge to clear out the background area that is not going to print. And here's how it looks so far. Hey, there's Targ. Let's see what Targ thinks. Is it looking okay? Yay, Targ thinks so. Once the background, flowers, and basket were carved, I was ready to start on the dog. And I thought it would be easier to work from a flipped version of the photo. And then I also printed out a very lightened copy so that I could see a little bit better details in the shadows. Another thing that I thought would help me in carving the markings on her face and the highlight areas was to mark in colored pencil the areas that were going to be white. Doing the Linocut is kind of like having to think backwards. And unlike drawing with a pen or a pencil, where you're making lines and marks that show up dark, in Linocut, you're cutting away what should be white, where the white of the paper should show through. You're cutting that away and leaving the lines and other marks that are going to catch the ink and print. So that's what I decided to do, was kind of mark with colored pencil, and I think it did help me in carving out those areas. I referred to the printouts of Wren quite a bit at this stage of the carving. I was double checking, her markings, what areas were highlights and should be white, the direction that her hair was growing, and the waves in her ears. So here's how it's looking at this point, and I'm ready to try a print. I've got some black ink, which I'm going to put a daub of on this old plastic clipboard and roll it in different directions to get it smoothed out. Roll it onto the block and then position the card carefully over the linoleum. And then I burnished by hand just with the back of a plastic spoon, and was trying to make sure and um, rub all over from top to bottom, side to side. And this first print came out too light. So I inked the lino again and got a new card, and this time did burnish for longer, and again trying to make sure I get all around from the edges and the inside part. So I checked to see how it was coming along, saw that it did need more burnishing, so that's better. And then checked the bottom, and that needed some more burnishing also. So this one got definitely more than the first block, and turned out better. I didn't want the first print to go to waste, so I went ahead and hand colored it with some colored pencil and watercolor. Looking at the first two prints that I made, I decided that the white areas needed to be cleaned out even more. So I went back to the block and did some more carving. It really shows up here where I carved out more of the lino, and then also did some tweaking of the flowers. So to see how these adjustments are going to look, I ink up the block again, get a fresh piece of paper, and line it to the block, and start with the burnishing. I changed to a wooden spoon. I think the black of the plastic spoon was rubbing off a little bit on the paper. So anyway, did a lot more burnishing, and it came out nice. Compared to the first print, I liked having the white areas more cleared out. Now I may do more tweaking on the block, but for now I was happy with it and went ahead and hand colored this card. I have more Linocut projects and an oil portrait commission to do, among other things. So to see what's coming up, please subscribe.